Welcome classic rock fans to an album review, and today I want to talk about Infernal by Fido. This album concludes a triptych of albums which include Doomsday Afternoon and The Great Leap, and it certainly maintains the exceptional textures and colours that were established on those first two records, as well as the sheer idiosyncratic brilliance of them. This of course forms the final part of what has been described as an eco-terror tale. It's like a brave new world in many respects, certainly in terms of its atmosphere. However, rather than a narrative, it presents us with a more impressionistic soup of nightmarish dystopian possibilities. Environmental collapse, authoritarian governments, and a somnambulant populace. Reminds me a little bit of Pink Floyd's Animals and Sheep. Although, like Animals, it's a dark album, there's no doubt about that, but it doesn't contain the spit and bile of Waters' Beast fable. It contains a more brooding menace, I think. And like Fido's other work, it's musically lush and complex, and I feel references classic King Crimson quite often. It presents us with a rather gloomy prognosis for humanity, presenting us with, themes of terror and fear. And this is perfectly reflected in the artwork, which brings together a kind of melding of influences of Hieronymus Bosch and Salvador Dali, who obviously make wonderful bedfellows. Of course, the artwork, if I may refer to the notes, is the work of Molly Rutten. In many ways represents the thematic and musical smorgasbord that is this album. Almost like the bastard progeny of Aldous Huxley and Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare. Although Infernal is a dark album, there's no doubt about that, it doesn't feel oppressively so, unlike something like the Mars Volta's Delouse in the Comatorium. Again, and I think that's thanks to its lush orchestrations, the melodic and ethereal quality of this music, and of course the soaring guitars and sublime warblings of Valerie Gracious does a lot to soften the edges, I guess. To put this in context in terms of the previous albums, if you'll forgive me for reading, the previous album, The Great Leap, is a series of vignettes, I think, set in a world of dystopian speculative fiction. We are presented ultimately with the breakdown of society here, the rise of cults and the crackdowns on individual freedom. Thank heavens we don't live in a world like that. Whereas Doomsday Afternoon, these ideas are brought back and referenced, of course, but I think Doomsday is more about a single narrative following a couple or various couples, which could in many ways be analogous to the need to knit together society, perhaps, but I'm probably just reaching there. You kind of get the idea where these albums are going. They certainly don't make pleasant bedtime reading. And Infernal is an album that's in 4 parts, which makes it interesting structurally. And as I said, it's an album that seems to reference classic King Crimson. It certainly has a lysergic buzz to it. In fact, I have to say that I think a lot of Fido's work, and what I found most appealing about it, is it seems to embrace this rather dark psychedelia, more electric prunes than the sunny disposition of the Haight-Ashbury set. Wonderful line on this album, like, the crowd is into gloom, they worship dread, castaways like flies above the dead. This album has an aura that's best described as mystical, almost medieval at times. There is an inherent darkness at its core, all presented to us amid this very lush musical palette. The first section is breathtaking both musically and lyrically, picking up these ideas laid down by the previous 2 albums. It's a clever amalgam of musical motifs and links to those previous 2 albums that establishes, if not a narrative, at least a thematic thread. We get a song like Crumble, for example, which I think features on, I can't remember which one it was, certainly the previous 2 albums, but it also features on this one. In fact, if I may quote from the Troglodytes website, looking back at Doomsday, Crumble appears 3 times, the first with full band and orchestration, the second with vocal and piano, and the third with an unaccompanied voice. That continuum, one can see the song, as the title suggests, it's crumbled away musically and lyrically. This album is full of intriguing musical moments and prog splendour, there's no doubt about that. And the first number, Cast Out the Cold, swells and builds with its use of effects and harmonies with a remarkable blend of voices and pastoral instrumentation. The Era Lives On has an urgency to it. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the one that references that famous Chairman Mao speech It has a slow marching rhythm, a quick enhanced interrogation. Let's find out all they know. I mean, crikey, they're scary lines right there, aren't they? But as I said, with the Chairman Mao speech in 1957, that's right, he seemingly invited open criticism of his government, only to take those blossoms who lifted their heads and pluck them both violently and permanently from society. And that's alluded to in The Era Lives On, if I may quote. Did you catch them? Did you find them and expose them so we all see? We can crack them and their obstruction and conduct them to where nobody leaves. We've been waiting for this dissension. Yes, we all have our roles for the show. Just taste of pure investigation. Let the 100 blossoms grow. Interestingly, the idea of flowers and things springing up and blossoming has a very positive image. Of course, juxtaposed with the actual factual events, it's anything but. But this level of intrigue and paranoia seems to be very much part of the human condition, and one explored beautifully on this album. And I have to say, it's all exacerbated by the dynamics and pace of the music. I love the squeal of the guitars. It emphasises something programmed and robotic in some respects, before it ends with that marching tattoo of drums. I love the song Crumble. I don't know if I'm reading it right, but I like the idea of these relationships and the idea of impermanence as well. It reminds me of that Led Zeppelin lyric, even mountains crumble into the sea. The idea of permanence and impermanence being beautifully portrayed to represent the ecological threat, I think, that we all face. And Valerie Gracious' vocals are just absolutely beautiful. She sings a cappella, and this song segues, I believe, into The Inquisitor, with its beautiful use of keyboards to exacerbate the darker elements of this number. We Only Have Eyes for You is almost reminiscent of Pink Floyd's Run Like Hell with its chugging guitar. You better run, you better hide, leave it all behind you, leave it all and go, he sings. It is a psychedelic-infused slice of paranoia, all ornamented with beautifully flanged guitar and vocals. You also get this flute and distinctive organ sound that reminds me of classic Tull. It ends with this serene wail of guitar that has the hair standing up on the back of my neck. Or is that Sourdough? I'm not sure. The tracks kind of merge into each other, so I'm not sure where one ends and one begins. Interestingly, Sourdough is an anagram for dormouse. Make of that what you will. I love the keyboards and thud that introduces the walker. It has a majesty to it that almost feels like a doff of the captor in the court of the Crimson King. And beautiful voices by Ariel Farber, and Valerie Gracious. He walks on water to the end of days. And the beautiful reverbed guitar here is like a cross between very early Floyd and the Venturas. I keep referencing Pink Floyd. I'm pretty sure, I don't know how conscious Fido is in sort of referencing lots of classic prog in his music. I'm not even sure if Fido is, I know he's a multi-instrumentalist, or are Fido a band these days? I'm not 100% sure, but I do know he's producing fine music that I urge you to check out. The unapologetic prog of C99 begins with the guitars attempting to emulate the sound of sirens, just to emphasise that menace. Before you get those chilling lines, take me to your leader so I may be reborn. C99 is a venture into a kind of a totalitarian surrealism. It's just remarkable, and it certainly has its contribution on an album of contrasts. All good prog should be, and it has you get some very beguiling melodies, wry poetic lyricism, all served with this distinctive flair for melodrama. Wake the Sleeper provides a wonderful platform for Fido's vocals, I believe. Tumbleweed, with its beautiful guitar tones and plaintive, almost spoken word, is haunting. And the thrilling drums that punctuate this number add to the dread, I think, evoked overall by it. Order of Protection 1 is another remarkable number in terms of its instrumentation. Somber piano notes ring out like a cathedral bell before you get that beautiful blend of voices. And I believe there's actually a choral section on here. Metro Death Fire features a great lead vocal from Fido, accompanied by the keyboard and guitars. And The Sleeper's Wake opens with a foxtrot-like acoustic guitar piece. Infernal is an album that's full of refreshing theatrical allusions, I think, to classic prog, as well as his own back catalogue. I think the idea is to suggest familiarity, at the same time present us with a very destabilising, psychologically anyway, narrative. And I love these musical leitmotifs that serve to connect the individual parts. I mean, if I may quote Jordan Blum of the Prog Report, Every one of these connections will delight devotees, as will the brief scattered respites that basically act like soliloquies, monologues, intermissions. Together, these elements make the album feel at once laudably unique, yet endearingly familiar, while also revealing and justifying why it took so long and such a passion to get this project completed. Order of Protection 2 is a return to the earlier instrumental with a wonderful line in there. I believe we are witness to reprieve, once forsaken, now in league, and I'm here to guarantee there's nothing else you need but me. There are almost prophetic, almost biblical dimensions to this message, possibly referencing Trump's presidency. Who knows, I don't know what was going on in his head at the time. And the final bit of this wonderful, sprawling, fantastic double album is From Hydrogen to Love at over 14 minutes. It's the longest piece on the album, and it's full of prog goodness. It has this swelling threat in its it's very reminiscent of Gustav Holst's Mars, the Bringer of War. Yet also seems to reference sonically bands like the Beatles and Muse, Baroque pop, and even Italian prog. My word, there's a lot of stuff going on here. It creates a rich tapestry, a real cultural stew of musical impressions. Eternal is a wonderful synopsis, I think, is a summation of what we must take, I think, from this record. Sung beautifully in a serious voice and whispers. 3 voices here: rain carrying the ocean, rage carrying the day, rain showering emotion, rage bring down the rain. For me, I can almost hear Roger Daltrey's barbaric yop, with some lines from Quattrofin, Love Reign O'er Me. This album is like a little shop of horrors of modern nightmarish scenarios, from drones, government interference, deception, dictators. It's like some sort of postmodern gothic. It's absolutely fabulous. Ray Bradbury perhaps would be proud of this one. Fido's work for me is stunning, multi-layered and complex. It's just wonderful, wonderful prog. This impressionistic collection, whereas as listeners we're forced to kind of join all these little sonic dots. It's a bit like Sirat on acid. The musical references are absolutely delightful, as well as being incredibly individualistic as well. I urge you to check out some of this guy's music. You can probably find it on YouTube if you want to be a bit of a skinflint and not pay out for it. But they're definitely worth buying because they're beautifully lavish as well in their presentations of the vinyl and the CDs. Anyway, that's my assessment of Phideaux's Infernal. Anyway, if you enjoyed this review, please be sure to click like, subscribe and check that bell. And check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done here at Classic Album Review. I'll leave you as I always do by wishing you a very happy new year, hoping you're all warm, safe, and more importantly that you keep listening.